Hello, Texas. I'm Robert Sines with The Texas Examiner and my co-host, John Tipton. And today we've got a great show for you folks. We're very honored and proud to have the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Texas, Mr. Jaime Esparza. We'll be diving into what the U.S. Attorney does. Obviously we know he prosecutes all federal crimes, right, but also how Mr. Jaime Esparza got to this honorable position. His journey to here, John, and it's a wonderful journey.
Robert, I'm just amazed every single time we sit down, and it's been a while since we've done a show. Mm-hmm. We were blowing and going there for quite a while, and we had a lot of information. So it's really refreshing to be able to sit down and not have the outside pressures of politics and all this other stuff, and we can talk about the things that matter to the community, like human trafficking, sex trafficking, the things and immigration. Yes, right. Immigration, of course, that's a hot button right now. So we're very fortunate, and thank you for your contacts, and thank you for joining us today to share your insight and experience. Yeah,
so let's hit it off here with Jaime. May I call you Jaime?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. We've known each other too long.
Yes, yes. Actually, I knew Mr. Esparza when he was a district attorney in El Paso, and back when I used to play a lot of tennis, and I'd let him win because I was working for a congressman at the time.
Yeah, so. No, you played pretty well.
There's people out there that think that you just wake up one day and you're born to be you're born as a district attorney.
Right.
That doesn't happen?
No.
Yeah, no.
Jaime, tell us about yourself. Where were you born? Where you come from? And how'd you get into this business?
I was born and raised in El Paso. Went to public school. Ended up at the University of Texas. Was out a year, went to U.H., law school, left there, and really my big break came when I was lucky enough to work in the Harris County office, the DA's office. That's in Houston.
Okay.
It's the largest office in the state, at least it was at the time. It was just blowing and going, and so you got a lot of experience. I spent 4 years there. Wouldn't give it up. It was a great job. It was a good place to learn. Then my wife and I, we got married. We decided to go to El Paso to raise the family. And I worked in that DA's office for just under a year. Didn't like the way that guy ran the office. Left. I say I left. I think he'd say he fired me. But in either case,
I like that.
One or the other. Something happened.
I like that.
I had to go home and tell my wife I didn't have a job. So
right,
that was the bottom line.
I got you.
But luckily, a position opened at the public defender's office. The public defender needed a first assistant. I got that job, and I did that for about 3 years. And then I decided I'd run against the guy that let me go.
Wow, how sweet that must feel.
Yeah, it was nice. And and then it was an interesting race, and it was just turned out it was a primary in El Paso. It's the primary where you got to win.
Right.
And it was just he and I, and really, I was a very newbie. I had never run politically.
How was that race? Was it? Were you guys gentlemen, or was it the
we were nice. It wasn't. In some ways, it wasn't a fair race. I had back then. I don't know. I think I was like 34 years old.
Oh yeah.
Pretty cocky. Tried a lot of cases.
Right.
He won that kind of lawyer. God bless him. And there was an age difference, and
it played to your advantage. Huh?
It did play to my advantage because I was just. Quicker. And,
sure.
And then I had a lot of experience, and I was board certified in criminal law. After I got my license, I went back in criminal law. So he wasn't doing courtroom work.
Okay.
So it wasn't a fair fight.
It sounds like the people made a good choice then.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I was a newbie, and I never ran for office, and no one in my family's ever been a politician. I'm the only lawyer. And but back in El Paso, there were, I think, around 94 precincts. I won every precinct. It wasn't even close. Wasn't even close.
Wow. That's awesome.
And so and then really I started the DA's office in 93, and I was there for 28 years.
Wow.
7 elections. Unfortunately, I think I had an opponent every time, so you got to keep running. I'm glad I don't do that anymore.
Keep applying
that's
for that
hard.
job.
That's hard.
Is it?
Yeah. But running an office, especially that office, it was sweet. It was a good office. We made a lot of changes. I had a lot of experience, and that helped. But we made a lot of good changes. And when I left, the office that I left didn't even look like the office that I got there with.
We'd
gotten bigger. Back then the office had only felony work. I got the misdemeanors. We were doing pretty state of the art intake. I copied that from Houston. There's only 2 places in the state to do that, Houston and us. It's really a lot. It's a huge saving to the county. I've said this tons of times. Easily $2 million a year save that county because of the way we process cases. It would take me too long to explain it, but let me just without getting in the weeds. Being able to have a DA on call, and that city's large enough to do that, and accept or decline a case on routine felonies and misdemeanors. It's doable. They do it in Houston. We did it in El Paso. Huge savings. We did a lot of good things. Worked on domestic violence, you name it.
I'm so confused. And I know we're not supposed to really talk politics, but there's R and there's D, and the general public don't associate D's with saving money.
That's
I'm
a
so
shot.
confused.
Well, I think
It's because they don't. If you run for public office, you that community is very close to me, and so you watch your pennies. Everybody watches their pennies, and I was very lucky that I had a lot of good support from the county. And after 28 years, you go through a couple of administrations, but they all were pretty good to me.
Good.
And so, we did some really smart things in that office. I mean, among other things, this is prosecutors would understand this. The way we process our cases, the way we turn over our discovery, was ahead of the time. Now, because of, and prosecutors would know this case, because of the Michael Morton Act, we have to be much more transparent. We were always like that. And so we were we transitioned into it, but by the time Michael Morton came, we were ahead of the curve. So our transition wasn't nearly as difficult as for others. And they still, electronically, they're way ahead, so that we can send our cases to the other side really pretty seamlessly. There's a few hiccups every now and then, but pretty seamlessly.
Interesting.
It was an interesting, I enjoyed my 28 years. I probably would have kept running for office, except for one, it's a pain to have to do that. But also, after 28 years, you feel like the county gets to change channels. Really, 28 years.
So this, Robert, I'm looking at, would you consider that office to be a model office for the state of Texas?
I think there are some really good systems that we put in place. One, the way we intake cases. 2, the way we process start cases. Except that every jurisdiction is different. Not too far from here in Comal County, that DA is a really good DA. She's just been there a while. Jennifer does good work. Her office is different than mine. It's smaller. It's more rural, not as urban as El Paso. So it just depends. I think it's hard to pick a model, but I do think there are traits in good offices that can be copied. And that makes a difference. And like Houston, I think Houston is a pretty well-run machine, but there are things that I'm sure they can improve on, but I've taken a lot from that office that's been helpful when I was running that office.
I want to jump into the U.S. Attorney, which is what he's doing, but I'm fascinated by this. I have to ask you this, Jaime. Here in Kendall County, some of the attorneys that I know, and this is probably not fair to the district attorney, I need to ask her too, but some of the attorneys I know complain often about that they have policies here on how they prosecute, and the word policy upsets some of these attorneys. They go, wait a minute, there should be, if I call and I say, look, I've got this person who's never been in trouble with the law and they found a little cocaine in his car, there's some extenuating circumstances, can we do some deferred adjudication? These defense attorneys keep complaining to me and saying, when they call the DA's office, they go, sorry, this is our policy. Is that something that happens across the state?
I think it does.
DAs have policies and they don't deviate from that?
Well, you'd like to have consistency. So if you don't have policies, you can get lawyers, and you get young lawyers, and they can easily end up doing stuff to cases that they're not supposed to be doing or that you're not happy with. So that's interesting that somebody would say, well, they have policies. The complaint I used to always hear is, well, you don't give them any discretion. Well, that's not true. The lawyer has discretion, but there are rules, and if not, you won't have consistency. So then, well, that lawyer is my buddy, so I'm giving him this deal on a case, but I don't really know that lawyer, so I'm doing this. And so if there's not a floor, if there's not a policy, then you're not really going to be able to prosecute in a more consistent way.
Gotcha.
If you think that a marijuana case should go to, if you go to a class, we'll dismiss it. That's fine if that's the policy. Like eventually in El Paso, we moved to that, to a first chance program, where if you got arrested and then you went to the program, we would let your case go. right?
Gotcha.
So it just depends, but that's not for every community.
Right.
But in some cases, before we did that, if I hadn't done that, some guy, I might have some prosecutor just giving my cases away.
Right.
And really, I'm the one that has to look at it, right?
Yes.
The same thing goes with pretrial diversion. DWIs is a perfect example where you can hear all sorts of great stories. He wasn't intoxicated. He only had one beer. It was his retirement party. You
Right.
name it, right?
Right.
So you do have to have like a floor. You have to have a policy. If not, eventually the bar will get upset because then they'll say, well, you're giving that guy this, but I'm getting this.
Right.
So the policy, I think, adds to
So it
consistency.
is important then.
Yeah, I
Okay.
see that a lot.
Yeah, and that's why I ask you, because I know there's three sides to every story, right? But here in Kendall County, we are known to be very, very strict with drugs. I know our district attorney, publicly states that a lot. It's like, we don't give a lot of discretion here. And we had the police chief here recently and a defense attorney, and it was an interesting show. We talked about, back in my day when I was in law enforcement, before cameras and before social media, you could use a little discretion on the streets. If I caught some kid with a couple of marijuana cigarettes, and I could call their mom or dad, but I asked the police chief that, and he goes, that's nice, but really can't do that anymore today because we got cameras on ourselves, and if I do it for one kid, I don't do it for the other. So kind of cops feel like at least that's what I'm hearing, that their discretion is limited.
It's not a bad thing. So I stopped my neighbor, and I'm the police officer. Well, he's my neighbor, and I give you a break. But
Right.
so the next kid you stop is not your neighbor, and
Right.
that goes for the ride. Right. So I do think that that sort of informal discretion, you really have to minimize that because you're not consistent across the board, and that's one of the things. You want to have some sense of fairness in the criminal justice system, right? You are going to be held accountable, and at what does that mean? And is it proportional to what you did?
Right.
And is it fair compared to everybody else you handled?
Right.
And so that's what the defense bar doesn't see.
Right.
Right. So it's a tough game. Those assistant DAs who are in court every day, I don't do that, but I used to do that. It's pretty hard.
Yeah.
And you try. You gotta be firm on the line. And then you hear it not just from the bar, you hear it from the defense bar, you hear it from your lawyers too. Well, I'm going to give him this, and so that is really the question. When the assistant DA tells you, well, I would have given him this, but for your policy, now you're wondering, well, what was fair?
Right.
Would you have broken the policy because fairness demanded it, or just because you knew him? Right. So it's a tricky thing. Every day that happens.
Yeah, when fairness demands it, I like that statement.
Yeah, so
to break the policy is okay as long as fairness demands it.
right. So
Yeah.
it's a tough call.
Yeah,
and they do it every day. I mean, if you walk into court, I kind of miss that especially in state court. The chaos of state court. There's a lot of decisions are happening. A lot of cases are moving, and it's a mix.
And I think this is a good segue, John. I want to ask Mr. Esparza, now that you're a U.S. attorney for the Western District of Texas, do you have that kind of discretion like you did when you were a DA?
We actually do. We have.
'Cause, I mean, these are serious cases now. We're not talking about DWI.
This isn't.
We're talking about white-collar crime, fentanyl.
I talk to state. I'm being from my state background. I'm pretty careful always to say, like, my cases now as the U.S. attorney, they aren't more important than my state cases.
Okay.
Because those prosecutors who are doing state work are doing really important work.
Okay.
Some of my cases are more impactful just because of the type of investigation that I can do now and the tools that I have that they do not have.
Okay.
And so we do have some more impactful cases, although, state prosecutors, depending on the facts, may have that as well. So, but we have discretion. We have discretion on how you charge. We have discretion on if there's a minimum sentence. There are ways that experienced prosecutors can move a case and I think get what holds the defendant accountable. The question really is just how do you move that, right? How do you determine what is right based on the conduct and on the conduct? And so it's a really difficult job. The AUSAs who are in court now, most of those guys have more experience. So in state court, it's not uncommon to get some some young lawyer who's got like a year out of law school.
Okay.
Right? That doesn't happen to us. You have to have some experience.
To be an assistant U.S. attorney.
Yeah. So we don't. A year is sufficient, but we usually it's more than that. And then a lot of these assistant U.S. come from like they were clerks for a judge or something.
Right.
So it's a different environment, and they don't have the. In state court, the beauty of state court was the chaos, and if you could survive that chaos, you survived. I mean, in Harris County, we went to trial almost at the drop of a hat. You're up, and you're like, okay, let's go. Yeah. I still have a son that works in Harris County in Houston, Texas, and he doesn't know. He complains now, which I totally get. You get ready for trial, and it doesn't go. I mean, I have to say, I've tried a lot of cases, but I probably got ready for 4 times as many.
Wow.
Because the case didn't go for all sorts of reasons. So those young prosecutors, whether it's state or federal court, that's a hard job, real hard job.
Looking at your experience and just hearing you speak, and I can hear the passion that you have for this profession. And so that leads me to believe that you're a mentor, most likely to some young attorneys and aspiring DAs. And I'm just wondering what would be the top 3 qualities that you look for in an aspiring district attorney?
I always ask actually I got done with an interview just before I came in here. I always ask, when I was the DA, one of the things you have to really want to do is you have to want to try a case. And it's easy to say that, I'll go to trial. That I really want to do that. It's different when you have to do it, right? And so, good prosecutors, they want to go to trial. They live to do that, and not everybody can do that. And you can still be a good trial lawyer, but so I always ask them, like, what would make you persuasive in front of a jury? I've heard all sorts of answers,
I can only imagine.
But I always think that it's your sincerity. Like I wasn't really. I had a really good mentor. And I watched him try a lot of cases. And one thing you learn is jurors don't miss a thing. They watch everything in that trial, everything. And what I think makes you a successful trial lawyer is you're consistent in your behavior. And you can only do that over a long period of time if you are sincere in what you're doing. Like if I used to have a lawyer friend he was in the Navy. He was a captain. He had that captain voice. Mm-hmm. And I always thought, oh man, I wish I had that voice because it's persuasive. It's like, oh man, I pay attention. Right. And he would only sustain that for like the first day of trial. So if the case only lasted a day, he was pretty good. But then he wouldn't keep it up. And I think the jury see through that. So if you're sincere in what you do, then you believe it, you see it. I can even see lawyers who I think is conduct I would never do. But they are consistent, and the jury sees that.
That's what I was saying.
And they believe it. And so the jury says, hey, that's who that guy is, right? So sometimes you'll hear, I don't know why that guy wins, because he's such a jerk. He's consistent. Yes. He believes in what he's doing, whether he's the prosecutor or the defense, he believes in what he's doing. And they find that very persuasive. So I think you really need to be persuasive. So I think that's the first thing. Wow. You got to work hard. You have to be good prosecutors. It's like teachers. Good teachers spend more time out of the classroom probably than in the classroom getting ready.
His wife's a teacher.
Yeah. She's in the school today in her classroom, right?
Yeah, they work hard. Good prosecutors work hard. You have to stay. You have to spend the afternoon. You have to spend.
See him in the courtroom. You as a DA, you would show up. I know you got a whole bunch of stuff to do, but you pop into the courtroom.
Well, I tried cases. I like that. I really like trying cases, and so I got to try cases when I was the elected DA. But the beauty of being the elected DA is that you get to pick your case.
Yeah, right.
So my poor guys in court, they kind of, but so I got to try some really interesting cases.
Can you tell us about one that's not under investigation obviously anymore?
When I was an ADA in Harris County, I tried this case where this guy's an ag robbery, and it was in the Heights, and this defendant was part of a crew. And they were burglarizing homes in the Heights. But then they got tired of being in the home, and then the homeowner would come in on them. So they decided to wait till the homeowner got in, and most of the homes they went into were elderly people. Mm-hmm. So it would just be a couple, nice house, but only 2, right? And so they went, this particular time, he went in, and they tied up the family. It was a couple. and really the guy was good looking white guy.
Home invasions, right?
Yep.
Basically.
But it was a robbery because they waited till they got there, and they threatened them, and they may have had weapons. Anyway, the case was really old. Nobody wanted to try it. It had to get tried, so I tried it, and I'll never forget it. Back then, you disclose your witnesses, but this was a rebuttal witness, and he claimed to be golfing in Austin, Texas, at the time of the offense. And nobody had ever checked out his alibi. So we went and checked his alibi, and it was around the 4th of July, and he even had the card. Most people don't keep the golf card.
The scorecard?
No, the scorecard. He had the scorecard. And so we found those 4 guys, and they go, oh, yeah, no, we did golf with him. Because you know how golf is. You can be a single and get on, right? So it was a foursome. It became a fivesome. And they came to testify. Y'all know we played golf with him, right? What they didn't know was, what they remembered about the round was not necessarily that they played with him, but there was a fire at the Bergstrom Airport. And so there was no, so then you can really pin the date because they couldn't be sure, right? They couldn't be sure. And so, I pinned the date down, and there was a fire. It was a training thing. And it was like a day or two before the burglary, right? So I didn't quite have him in Houston, but the argument that sold that jury is, well, if he'd lie about that, he'd lie about anything, right?
Wow.
And that jury bought it. And I'll never forget this. I remember hearing the jurors when they're deliberating tell I've told this story so many times. I could hear him, and I just imagined this one juror leaning back in his chair, and I don't know why I think that, but I didn't see it. And I hear this guy say, "Well, you heard what that little prosecutor said. If you'd lie about one thing, you'd lie about anything." And about an hour later, they ding, and he's guilty. So yeah, it was a great case. It was really great because I don't think the judge has passed away. But I don't think he thought we'd get him, and it was great. He deserved every bit of it.
Story.
He deserved it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a case that right before you left the district attorney's office to become the U.S. attorney involving, my memories faded a little bit, involving a child, a girl.
Oh, yeah, Alexandra Flores.
Exactly. It was very high profile nationally, and I believe this guy killed her, sexually assaulted her, left her under a railroad tracks or something like that. He took her from the Walmart way on the east side, right?
And then he left her up in town, actually in a parking lot. It was a doctor's office, and he left her there. She was dead, and he tried to burn the body.
How old was the child?
5.
5 years old.
5 years old.
Little girl.
Yeah, yeah. We
and he sexually assaulted her too, didn't he?
no, he did not.
Oh.
We never figured it out, but that actually is a good case. Oh, my mom always says not to say that. It's a sad case, okay?
Right.
But it was interesting. I should say interesting. That family, gosh, it's just a terrible story. Missing Alexandra. She was such a good kid.
Right.
But when we found her, she had I don't know if they want to hear this, but you can always take this out.
Sure.
They had a plastic bag over her head, and I tell you, he lit her on fire. But he lit her with an accelerant, and just like any accelerant, it went up and then went out.
Right.
So miracles of miracles, the bag it melts, but it just kind of shrinks around her, right?
Right.
And man, there was a really good crime scene guy. The crime scene unit was great. They get to the crime scene, and the medical examiner was really good, Dr. Contin. And they tell Dr. Contin, "Do you mind? We're going to transport her, but we're not going to put her in one of those black bags." And they don't want to do that because moisture could form on her, and they could lose evidence. So they transport her not in the bag. Then they get into the morgue, and they make this little tent over her. And this isn't, but something like super glue. They heat it up, it smokes,
Right.
and then it adheres to the oils of your skin, right?
Okay.
And so it adheres. So they do that. Then they take the tent down, and the crime scene guy says, "Well, he's looking for prints on the body."
Whoa.
They don't find anything on the body, but I'll be danged. They found the defendant's palm print right here on the plastic bag,
Oh my goodness.
and you're like, "Wow."
Science at work. Right.
Well, our bodies. I don't know. What are we? 80% water,
Yes.
90% water, 98% water,
Yes.
something like that. I think it's 98% water. and it was still there, right? And then the super glue stuff really it's we got it, so it wasn't going to change. So you take the bag off, and man, we had all sorts of fingerprint guys look at. We even had the crime scene guy go to Quantico to make sure to confirm the match, right? And eventually we got him, and then we found more evidence in his van. Eventually, that jury convicts that guy.
That's a lot of work.
The best story, I was just telling this story. I got way too many stories.
Yeah, I know.
But I like seeing you light up when you talk about it.
So we're trying that case, and it's a death penalty case. And, well, the first evidence I put on is I put how I got the print, and then I put the print on because I didn't want that jury going home thinking that, this is like a whodunit.
Right.
Well, you got more important issues than that. So I wanted them to know, right? So I like my second or third witness is the latent print examiner. And I put him on, I do all the stuff to get the print in, and of course he says the print matches the defendant. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure, whatever.
Right.
And so then I pass him, and the lawyer's on the other side, and he's asking him questions, and then I hear him ask the latent print examiner, have you ever lied? And I'm thinking, well, the answer's going to be no, because, it's like on a police report, I'm assuming that's the question, right? And I hear the latent print examiner say, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
I go, oh, yeah. Now I look up. Now he's got my attention.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Of course
this
I've
was
lied.
supposed to be an easy witness.
Right.
But you could see the defense lawyer like, oh, no, I got him,
Right.
right? Have I ever lied? And he says, so you have lied. And then I'll never forget this. The latent print examiner says, of course I have. I've been married 3 times. What do you think? And the jury did just what you did. The jury did just that. Like,
And they cost you.
it was like,
That's what I was always taught to say. And when I was a federal agent, they would do the lie detector test. And I remember the boss would say, tell them the truth. If you've stolen a pencil or taken a government pen, tell them the truth.
yeah.
And I always said, yeah. They asked me one time, have you ever stolen anything? Okay, yes. What was it? It's like a box of government pens, They took them home.
Yeah. So I can still see it in the courtroom, and I remember the lawyer thinking, "Oh, I got him right."
Yes.
Yeah, no, not even.
That's funny.
It was really
sincerity is important, right?
Right.
And being genuine. In the interest of time, let's talk about some of the interesting cases as a U.S. attorney for our public. Jaime, what are the cases that you deal with, and how busy is it here in the? You have from San Antonio to El Paso, right?
Yeah,
That's your area.
we go all the way to Eagle Pass, Del Rio, Alpine, El Paso,
Right.
Midland, Waco, Austin, San
Oh,
Antonio.
wow, it's a lot of area.
It's a lot of area. It's like 68 counties, a little over 7 million people.
And are you one of the busiest? The Southern District of Texas.
The Western District.
Western District.
The Western District is one of the busiest districts in the state. We have 660 miles of border, more than anyone else.
Not only in the state, you're probably one of the busiest in the country, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there's 4 U.S. attorneys in Texas,
Right.
So 2 of them aren't on the border, 2 of them are.
Okay.
And so the Southern District, he's busy too.
Right.
But we see a lot of immigration,
Okay.
and that's not just because the issue occurs now. It has been the history of that district, right?
Yes.
Just our location, we've had a lot of immigration work, right?
Yes.
It takes a good 70% of our work is immigration work.
Yes.
And then we do all the other stuff. We do, mail fraud, wire fraud, people stealing from the government,
White-collar
you name
crimes.
it, white-collar crimes. Right now, fentanyl is a real issue. It's coming. We get a lot of those cases. It has hit certain communities. Just the other day in Austin, they lost a good number of people as a result of fentanyl.
You
It's a
concern
deadly
me.
it's a deadly drug.
Well, you concern me, Jaime, because I'm skeptical by nature as a former Fed, but I hear about all this fentanyl and a lot of these a lot of talk, but I don't see a lot of cases. But you said something earlier. You said it's coming. It's not just
Well,
like
here
you know something that's going on.
Well, it's no secret. I mean, it is true that in the schools they see in Hayes County, they had a real problem. They had students who died as a result of the fentanyl, and they saw it in Georgetown as well. They see it in Austin. In El Paso,
the nice communities.
Yeah. In Austin, I haven't seen it so much. I mean, in El Paso, not yet, but a little. But we do pick up a lot of fentanyl on the border. And in Del Rio itself proper, we haven't had a lot of cases there, but it is coming. And the real problem is, you don't have to grow it, you can mix it, and then we get such different quantities, and it's just the smallest amounts. And so,
And is
you
it
know, if
coming
you're buying a prescription drug, if you're buying a prescription drug from someone other than a pharmacist, you ought to think twice, especially on the border.
And is it coming from China, like they say, or is it coming just from the border or here in
The raw
Texas?
materials are coming from China, and it's being
Yeah,
mixed.
right.
in-
Yeah, it's coming from China to Mexico. Mexico, they're mixing it, and then it comes into us.
Gotcha.
And so we see it, and really you would be anybody would be hard pressed to identify what a prescription pill looks like and what a
sure.
pill looks like that has fentanyl. And you know, you try to tell people it's like if you were making cookies.
Right.
You know, you said you put a cup of sugar, but you probably put more. You could have put less. And there is
These
no.
kids don't know what they're taking.
They have no idea what they're taking, and it's just sad. Now Texas, really, you got to hand it to them. They strengthened their laws regarding fentanyl. They just changed the homicide law, so include fentanyl death. That's really important, and they've done a lot of other things. Now schools, starting this year, I believe, they're going to have to give fentanyl education to these schools. I mean, you know, you'll hear, well, you can be overdosing on fentanyl, but if they give you Narcan, you'll survive. Well, but now they're putting xylazine in.
Yes.
In
That's for horses, right?
That's for horses.
Horse tranquilizer.
With the fentanyl, and if it has xylazine, the Narcan will not save you.
right.
So it's a really dangerous drug. And I just this morning I got an email from the U.S. Attorney from the Northern District, trying to get all four of us to do something for the schools, and I'm all for that. Actually, when I get back, I'll send her back an email.
If that comes something to fruition and you'd like help getting the word out, please let us know. We
Yes.
would love to be a part of that. Anything to educate the kids,
community.
especially in the community, on.
Well, I
that.
can really get you to. I'm sure I can get a DEA agent who is really well
front
schooled
lines.
on the front lines to talk to you. I mean, you know, if you can just go to, you can encourage your audience just to go to DEA.gov, I think is their website.
Yes, yes,
And you can see the number of
It's a great website. They're
young
very
people who have
informative.
died as a result of fentanyl. It's just a terrible crime.
And I agree I want to send them there to that, but you know, our audience, they're the touchy feeling,
Yeah.
they want to see it. So I want to put it right in front of them and make it real.
Right.
And to the point where, you know, if there's some graphics that people need to see,
That's
need
a great
to see
segue
that.
show. We'll get a DEA agent here
Yeah.
and do that.
I can help you with that. I mean, really, it's more
Appreciate
powerful than
that.
morphine, more powerful than heroin. It just takes whatever you can put on the tip of a pencil, and you're gone.
Here comes the conspiracy. Sorry, Robert.
Go ahead,
There's
go
a
ahead.
conspiracy part of me. In your research and your investigations, I just, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I'm China and I want to create disruption, do you think there's any sort of underhandedness with the Chinese?
Government
trying
intervention?
Yeah, I've heard that. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. I
nothing
would. My
definitive.
sense is the cartels they really are in the business of making money.
Because they're doing this in Europe also, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is because we're consumers.
It's a global problem.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Americans are known to be consumers. I mean, Mexico always. I know when I was in the Border Patrol, I always put it right back on us and go, "You're part of the problem because you guys use it, so we supply it." It's like okay, but it's a global problem.
It
You're right.
is. I mean, they make money off of drugs. They make money off of smuggling. They make money off of fentanyl. If they can make money, they're in it for it.
Just
And
a
so
business decision.
it's just a business decision. And really the things that they do, really, it's the profit motive. And so if you can make money off it, they're going to do it.
And Jaime, I know you get it, drugs. I mean, the sex trafficking. We've had a sex trafficking show too, but also, we're here at a medical clinic at Kellum Family Medicine Studios, and I'm a medical consultant, as you know, and I help a lot of doctors. I often run into cases where I can use discretion, fortunately, because most doctors, they're good guys or gals. They're not in the business to do wrong, but they hire some $15 an hour office manager and run their billing, and the next thing you know, they're in trouble with the FBI because of billing fraud, or they're prescribing to their patients too much that are asking for everything, and they're empathetic, and next thing you know, they're in trouble with the DEA for overprescribing. I know your office runs into cases like that too a lot with doctors that get involved and they get in trouble. And as a consultant, I pride myself in trying to be the middle guy. If I find a good doctor that maybe made a mistake, and I can work with the DEA or FBI. Sometimes we can come into a mediation before it goes to, something worse. If it's pretty bad, then of course I call an attorney. but I have seen a lot of cases lately where doctors are getting or they're getting jammed up because of laboratory issues. Do y'all run into that a lot? I've seen that a lot in the Northern District of Texas, where they get involved in schemes where they're involved in labs. The doctors are making money on it,
Right.
and I've seen a lot of cases like that. Is that something y'all run into as well?
We see a whole variety, and I would just tell you that. I mean, I always think it's good if you can resolve it early.
Right.
You don't really want to be talking to somebody like me.
No,
Really. You just don't want
exactly.
to. I mean, we're
Exactly.
there's a reason we're prosecutors, and there is accountability, and and most of these crimes, it's not going to be like I didn't know, and so
That was where I was getting to.
there's a lot of intentionality here.
Yes.
And so I assume the defendant took a risk reward option, and so if I don't get caught, I'm good. If I get caught, well,
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
yeah.
The laws have changed, right? Because it used to be knowing and you had to knowing and doing it for gain, knowing and willful intent, I think it's called. Now it's like, that's not going to apply
I can
anymore.
tell you, we're just not very forgiving. And it's in San Antonio we have a lot of government operations.
Right.
So there's people who attempt to steal money
Yes.
from the government, and we're when we find it, we're not very nice about it.
Right.
It's just it's not right. It's our taxpayer money, and that there's a reason those guys get to use it, and they
Right.
need to use it appropriately. So
Same with banking. I'm assuming the banking industry, is that still a problem out there with, and when it comes to white collar crime? I always think of banking and, guys that are.
I think for most part, I mean, I wouldn't want your audience to think. Really, for the most part, most people do it right. Most people follow the rules. Most people know, and most people understand the benefit of following the rules. The benefit of following the rules is not just for following the rules, that we all benefit from that as a community.
Right.
But there are some people where that doesn't matter, and
Right.
they're gonna take advantage where they can.
Sure.
And really, when we can apprehend those people, we're gonna hold them accountable.
Good.
So it's amazing to me when you think about it as a layperson, right? You're out here in the community, you're watching the TV, you're listening to these podcasts, and everybody's being arrested and tried for everything, and then we bring in things like January 6th and all this other stuff, and folks, I think, lose the concept to understand that if you're in your I don't want to say your courtroom, but if they're coming to see you or you're involved, there's a very good reason. It's not because somebody just arbitrarily said, I
US
don't like you, we're going to put you. No, there is a big.
If you're getting a
stack of
subpoena from the U.S.
paperwork.
Attorney's Office, they've done their homework.
Yes.
Right.
Well, there's a problem. You just if you just take a step back and look at state crimes. I mean, let's look at a DWI. So we get lots of DWIs. I wouldn't be surprised if in this county, DWIs are the number one case in the office. In my office, when I was in El Paso, it was our number one case. I'm sure it is in Bexar County. So, and those are terrible, and you hear all sorts of stories. Only had one beer, whatever. Yeah, all you got to do is talk to a family that loses somebody as a result of a drunk driver, and that you will never forget that. And I've had way too many conversations, and so every time there's a crime, not just DWI, could be assault, family violence, domestic violence. Every time you think about the defendant, you got to tell yourself there's a victim,
Good point.
and that victim. It's very hard. We put that victim in the criminal justice system. It's not the civil system. So, we're in the criminal system, we're holding the defendant accountable. So the victim's voice isn't as loud as it should be. It's one of the things as the DA when I was in El Paso is trying to get the victim's voice to be loud in the courtroom so that when the players are in the courtroom, we remember that there is a victim. Now, sure, there's what some people call victimless crimes, but they are few and far between versus the number of victims that end up taking the ride because of the defendant, and that's always forgotten. And I'm a big victim advocate. I think they should have their voice. They're in a system. They're part of a justice system. They didn't want anything to do with it, but as a result of the defendant's conduct, they're now in for the ride. And I got to tell you, there's just some sad stories. It could be a murder, it could be an ag rob, could be a robbery, but like an intox manslaughter. You're driving along. Your kids are driving along, and then they get hit by a drunk driver, and then they're not here anymore. We had a case. I tried it. It was in El Paso. It was on Montana, busy street. She was stopped at the red light, and the truck went up right behind her, hit her from behind, killed her just like that. It's a terrible thing. And he happened to be a soldier at the base, and he was highly intoxicated. Those are just terrible stories, right? Should never ever happen.
Yeah, that hits really, really, really close to home. I've struggled with alcohol and addiction, and we've talked a little bit about that with Melissa Duder, and there's a lot of veterans that deal with that. And I gotta tell you, and I'm publicly saying this, the Army does a horrible job of taking care of their soldiers and the veterans, and when they put them in these situations to do what they're asked to do day in, day out, beating their bodies up all the time and encouraging drinking and alcohol. The Army's culpable, in my opinion, in a lot of respects. Yes, that individual made the decision to get behind the wheel, but they're also being used and taught to, that it's okay, despite the outward.
The culture,
appearance.
you mean?
Yeah, the culture encourages it, despite the outward. It's not acceptable.
Well, that's law enforcement. I know when I was in Border Patrol, we had choir practice. After we worked 4 to midnight, or even midnight to 8, the 8 or 10 of you guys would get together in the parking lot and drink beer.
Right.
And it was, and I look back at it now and I go, wow, that was kind of irresponsible.
Right.
But
Yeah, and so a state office will see DWIs,
yeah,
and then they'll see domestic violence.
Yeah.
And those are terrible cases
Yes.
because a lot of people quite don't understand what her position is. Sometimes they want to prosecute, most times they don't, but she doesn't want to prosecute for a whole variety of reasons. And one of the bottom of the list is it didn't happen. Generally, it did happen, but she's married to the guy, she loves the guy, she has kids by the guy. They have finances, they have families. It's embarrassing. The person you chose and you thought loved you, you love them, and they're hitting you. And those domestic violence cases are a real challenge for prosecutors' offices because, one, they're almost as numerous as DWIs, and they're very hard cases, super hard cases. I got interviewed once, and by NPR, and I told them they're like murder cases, and I think they thought that meant that, well, every domestic violence will result in a murder or a homicide. That is true, it can happen. But that wasn't what I was telling them, is that a domestic violence case is as complicated as a murder case. There's the challenges of getting your witnesses there, the evidentiary questions. Young prosecutors have challenges to take those cases, and they don't make it easier because we still don't talk about domestic violence in a really open way. Not like we do about DWI, right? We don't do that. It's a struggle.
We're ashamed of it.
Right, and we're still losing TCFV, Texas Council on Family Violence. You can go to there. I think it's tcfv.org, and you can every year they publish the number of women who die. Actually, it's both men and women who die at the hands of their intimate partner, and it's over 200.
Oh my
and
goodness.
it's really sad, and it's a really interesting website to look at. It's like a 2-page press release. And then if you wanted to, you could delve into the circumstances because they also have a more lengthy report.
You're alluding, or you said that domestic violence is like DWI. It's still plaguing us in this country, but we're just kind of sweeping it under the rug.
Well, we don't talk
as a
about
society.
it. We don't talk about it enough. It's because it's a very difficult conversation to have, and I say she, but there are males who are victims too. But it's a very difficult conversation for her to have, and for her to have in a way that is smart. Plus, like if she leaves, where is she going?
And plus, once you have that conversation, you've pretty much drawn the line. You're saying, I don't want to be with you anymore with this other person because I'm.
And just think of the challenge. I mean,
people don't want to do that.
So then prosecutors have the challenge of trying to go to trial on that case.
Yeah.
They don't go to trial. It's not uncommon for you to wait over a year to go to trial. And can you imagine having that over your intimate partner?
And
It's very hard. Those are just tough cases.
The mental health aspect associated with that. I mean, so you have a family unit that's going through the problems, but where does your office or does the state district attorney bring in an expert on mental health to help determine and develop their case?
Is that their responsibility?
I don't know.
Well, I think, you see now the criminal justice system at least trying to get smarter on mental health. Police departments are doing that to cut down the interaction that they have with the public in a poor way, so that you can understand who you're dealing with, right? In domestic violence, we haven't really seen that so much, and that could be part of it. But as a rule, I think the criminal justice system is now grasping the issue of mental health, and we cannot send you to jail just because we don't know how to deal with your mental health, and so we put you away.
Wow.
Right? So there's got to be a better answer, and that is the challenge for the criminal justice system, especially in state court, where, when I was a DA in El Paso, we had probably 25,000 cases a year, about 17,000 misdemeanors, something where like 8,000 felonies a year, right? I have to say, as the U.S. attorney, I don't have nearly that volume. There's a lot of reasons for that, but those state prosecutors, their hands are full, and it's very hard to try to get the resources necessary, not just prosecutors, but a whole composite, a complete program of resources so that we can deal with that in a smart way.
And Jaime, one of the last questions I have for you that I got to ask is, over my career and also as a consultant, I see it more as a consultant. Sometimes I get clients that have been under investigation by federal agencies, whether that's Medicare, DEA, OIG, FBI. Some of these things go on forever. It seems like, I had a doctor once that was a client of mine, and I was real proud of this case because it was in San Antonio. It was before you got here. And they were investigating him for something to do with billing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this thing went on for like 2 years. And then it just kind of died, and we didn't hear anything. And I would call the attorney on behalf of the doctor going, can we call the U.S. attorney to find out what's going on? No indictment, nothing. This guy's just stressing himself to death. And finally got a letter of non-prosecution, I think. Mm-hmm. It's a non-prosecutorial agreement or something like that. I'd never seen that before. Why is that some of these cases can go on for so long? Is there ever an end, or can a person who knows or believes they're innocent and this thing's gone on for several years go to your office and go, hey, can we just get an answer?
Okay, well, most people are not coming to our office telling us they're innocent. Okay, just let's start there. Okay. All right, but I do think, what I'm saying, but right? I do think if you have open conversations with the agents, right? I think that's very helpful. Yes. It may lead to talking to an AUSA, but one of the challenges that are being faced is the agent has more than one case, so resources are limited, and we see a lot of the agent is here for a couple of years and then they move them. Exactly. And that makes it hard. And then, of course, the AUSAs, these cases take lots of time. It takes lots of investment. It just takes a while.
But can't they do sometimes like here, the DAs, the local DA's office will go, we're just going to dismiss this case. You see that a lot in the state.
It's not, yeah, you do. In state court.
Not in the U.S.
Not because the case is much more complex. That's one of the reasons the number of cases we have is less than state court. So a state prosecutor can handle a complex case, but more often than not, our cases are going to be much more complex, and we're using legal process that is much more complex than the state prosecutors using. Okay. So that's one of the reasons that it just takes a while.
It's not a strategy to wear down the other guy.
No.
Okay, good. I had to ask that for some of the clients that I've represented in the past or helped, because they go, are they just wearing me down? I go, no, I think it's a matter, like say, resources. And I've seen it as an agent. They leave, they get transferred, and it's like the new guy doesn't want to take that case, but they're not going to dismiss it because it's.
Next thing you know, 20 years later.
Well, you never know what's on.
You never know.
And you're going to commit yourself to that case, and then there's another priority. So,
right. Yeah. Fentanyl today, immigration tomorrow, whatever.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's resources.
Right.
Yeah. And I appreciate you being so candid, because these are questions that people don't get to ask the U.S. attorney every day.
Well, and it's because you're answering and you're being so open with this. It just gives me a renewed sense of hope.
Yes.
And knowing that we've got the right person.
Our system is fair.
It is.
Yeah,
I really believe that it is, especially with people like you in your position, or more people like that.
Right.
I'm not worried.
Right.
No matter what happens in November, I'm confident.
Or on social media.
Or social media.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Well, holding someone accountable is just not an easy process. I mean, we have due process, which the defendant has every right to, but there are challenges, and that holding them accountable really makes it's not a 1, 2, 3 step. In state court, some cases are pretty simple. Most of our cases in federal court now are not like that. So it just depends. You got to look at kind of the broad picture of what you're seeing, right? So that, like I tell you, I think state court has impactful cases. I would say that we probably have impactful cases, but we also have tools that they do not have, and that's helpful.
Interesting. Well, John, I think
I've hit a data point. That's a
did you
lot
learn
of good
something here?
stuff.
Okay.
A lot of good stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not
how,
gonna
what a wonderful opportunity to have an actual U.S. attorney here in our studio that's willing to spend some time and talk to us, educate us about the process and the system, and who's been a district attorney as well.
Oh, happy to have been here. Thank you.
Jaime, thank you so much for taking the hour of your time to educate our public and to spend time here with the Texas Examiner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. Thank you for joining us. Please do not forget to go ahead and do all the perfunctory things where you hit the button, the bell, and
Just like
the
us.
whistle. Just like us and share us so we can continue to bring you content like this. Again, just as a reminder, we have zero income from this. We fund this by ourselves out of our own pockets because we want to bring you, the community, the truth as we can gather it and show it based on fact.
Right from the person himself or herself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So please do what you can to share us, encourage people to listen and watch, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.